Please welcome primatologist Jane Goodall and Time Senior Editor Haley Sweetland Edwards.
Thank you, Jane, for being here. One of my panelists here requires no introduction, our world-famous primatologist. Two require a little bit of introduction. This is Cow, and this is Mr. H, and we'll hear from them a little later. I don't even know where to begin. Obviously, from the standing ovation, everyone knows who Dr. Jane Goodall is. Leonardo DiCaprio called her one of the most important and impactful leaders on the planet. She, of course, revolutionized primate science and has become one of the leading voices in wildlife conservation and environmentalism in the last, how many years? 60 years?
60, yeah.
60 years. So I actually want to start back in 1960. One of the hallmarks of your career was that you were a young woman in the African rainforest practicing science at a time when young women didn't really go to the African rainforest or practice science. How has that shaped your career?
Well, the thing is, I wasn't practicing science. I didn't want to be a scientist. Well, girls didn't become scientists back when I was young. I wanted to be a naturalist. I wanted to live with wild animals in Africa, and I wanted to write books about them. So when I went out to Gombe in 1960, Gombe National Park in Tanzania, there was no protocol for me to follow. I just had to do what I'd done all my childhood when I was watching squirrels and birds, and just, wait till the chimpanzees accepted me, which took an awful long time, and so that I could get to know them as individuals. And the way that I did this study was absolutely contrary to scientific norms at the time, so that when I finally got to Cambridge, because Leakey said, my mentor, Lewis Leakey, said that I had to get a degree. There was no time for a BA. I had to go straight for a PhD. And I was told I'd done everything wrong. Chimpanzees should have numbers, not names. Can't talk about personality, can't talk about mind, can't talk about emotion. Those are unique to us. But fortunately, when I was a child, I had a great teacher who taught me that in this respect, these erudite scientists were completely wrong, and that was my dog, Rusty. I mean, you can't live I don't know if you have a dog, but if you live with a dog or a cat, a rabbit, a cow, a horse, a bird, you know that the scientists were wrong.
Absolutely. Do you think that you could have made the discoveries that you made, that chimpanzees have unique personalities, that they use tools, had you not had that sort of relationship with animals?
Well, I think it helped. I think it helped quite a bit. And, I had an open mind. I was chosen by Lewis Leakey because he said he didn't want a mind that was contaminated by the reductionist way of thinking of scientists at that time. I mean, I was actually taught when I finally got to Cambridge, there was a difference between us and all other animals, a difference of kind. We were elevated. There was an unbridgeable chasm. We were sort of, I suppose it started with religion, Adam and Eve. I don't know, but...
Well, again, anyone who's ever hung out with a dog knows that we're not all that dissimilar.
Yeah, we're not the only beings on the planet, personality, mind, and emotion.
Right.
And so, the scientists began to accept this because chimps are biologically so like us. And, then when my late husband was sent out by National Geographic, and he took photographs and film of all these things that the scientists hadn't wanted to believe, they had to believe it. and they had to believe that the behavioral similarities as well. And so I really think, thanks to the chimps, thanks to my uneducated mind, we were able to persuade science gradually to come out of this narrow reductionist way of thinking.
One of the things that's striking about you as a young woman, 26 years old, making these incredible discoveries is all of the press afterward commented on your blonde ponytail and your legs. I remember quite a few
Lots
mentions.
of them, especially the scientists. She's only there because of her legs.
Right, her shapely legs.
So I said, well, if I'm there because of my legs, thank you, legs.
Do you think that you would have reacted differently to that sort of attention in the Me Too era, in the moment?
No, not at all. I would have scoffed and scorned and said rubbish, but I don't know.
It helped you do your work. Absolutely. Speaking of your work, over the last almost 30 years now, you've been involved with Roots and Shoots, and you mentor young people. You help young people all over the world become wildlife conservationists. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, you know, I was traveling around the world by this time, 1991, and I kept meeting young people who seemed to have lost hope for the future, and they were mostly apathetic, didn't seem to care, but some were angry and some were depressed. Why are you feeling this way? Because you've compromised our future and there's nothing we can do about it. Well, we have compromised their future. We've actually stolen their future, and we're still stealing it today. But is it too late to do something about it? I don't believe so. But it does mean we have to get together and take action now. And we have to understand that each single one of us, although we may feel helpless and hopeless as one person in a rather dark world, nevertheless, we have to realize that every individual makes a difference every single day. The choices we make, what we buy, was it made ethically? Did it harm the environment? Was there cruelty to animals? Is it cheap because of child slave labor? And when hundreds, thousands, millions, and hopefully billions of us make ethical choices, then we start moving towards a better world. So Roots and Shoots, which started with 12 high school students and has now spread around the world. It has members, kindergarten, university, everything in between. And its main message is every individual makes a difference and matters. But we decided from the very beginning that each group would choose 3 projects. They would choose, we wouldn't dictate. It would be bottom up. But they would choose a project help people, a project help animals, a project help the environment, or all 3 in one. And they would talk about what they were passionate about, decide what they could do about it, roll up their sleeves, and do it.
And that's one of the things that you talk about, is that it has to come from community. Wildlife conservation can't happen just through one animal. It has to come through the community, the nation, everyone who surrounds the habitat in which these
Yes.
people live.
You can't save chimpanzees, for example, without saving the forest, which means you save all the biodiversity in that forest, which is so important. And you save an environment that is so vital to us because forests provide us with clean air and clean water. They prevent soil erosion. They encourage rainfall. And so when I flew over the tiny Gombe National Park in 1990 and looked down on what had been part of the great equatorial forest stretching right across Africa, Central Africa, I looked down on a little island, a forest surrounded by completely bare fields, bare hills, more people living there than the land could support, too poor to buy food from elsewhere. And that's when the Jane Goodall Institute began our Takari Take Care program to improve the lives of the people, to move towards eliminating the terrible poverty of so many people. And that program, which has been super successful, includes scholarships to keep girls in school. Mohammed Yunus's Grameen Bank microcredit. We have 9 microcredit branches. And what started with 12 villages bounding Gombe is now in 104. And all of those villages have become our partners in conservation, understanding that to protect the environment is not just for the wildlife, it's their own future. Right. So we're in 6 other African countries doing that. And I know this has protected an awful lot of forest and chimpanzees.
So you can't protect chimpanzees without addressing poverty,
Yeah.
without addressing young people and getting everyone on board.
That's right.
If you're addressing a room full of influencers here, and you already mentioned that each individual makes a difference, is there some message that all of us can take home today that we can do to make the world slightly better in your vision?
Yes, I think we can think about the consequences of the small choices we make, or in some cases, for policymakers, the big changes we can make. Some big corporations, the CEO can make a huge difference with just signing, not a check exactly, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Right.
Signing something into legislation.
Right.
If
And
you're in government.
we live in this world, as you mentioned before, that's, we're facing these incredibly dire consequences of past actions. We have...
And present actions.
And present actions.
Countries where leaders are actually unraveling legislation to protect the environment.
I don't know what you could be referring to.
You can't imagine, can you? Deniers of climate change, I want them to go to the Antarctic, where the sea ice is melting faster than ever before, and dump them in the middle of it. And
So we have Cow here, who represents climate change, and is a reminder.
I think we all know that destroying forests and polluting the ocean are, adding to climate change, because both they're the 2 great lungs of the world, absorbing carbon dioxide, which of course is this great greenhouse gas, and giving out oxygen. We know that we're adding to the greenhouse gases with burning fossil fuel. Less people understand the consequences of the fact that more and more people are eating more and more meat, which means billions of animals now are in these unbelievably cruel factory farms. But some people don't seem to think that farm animals have feelings or emotions, which isn't true. But okay, you don't care about animal cruelty. What about the fact that we're wasting masses of water, changing vegetable to animal protein, and freshwater supplies are decreasing? That's going to be a huge problem later on. But also, the animals have to be fed. So we're destroying huge areas of habitat to grow the grain. Of course, we're spreading all these agricultural poisonous chemicals over the ground, which is absurd, but that's what we're doing. And then we're wasting lots of fossil fuel to get the grain to the animals to the abattoir, and the meat to the table. And in addition to that, I use cow when I'm talking to kids. Food in here and gas out the other end. And I know you're not kids, but still. That's methane. And that's a very, very vicious gas, greenhouse gas. And then if we don't care about the environment, well, maybe the fact that these poor animals have to be routinely fed antibiotics just to keep them alive, the bacteria are building up resistance, people are dying from a scratched finger because there's no antibiotic to cure it.
So it sounds like that's another something that this group of influencers can do.
Yes, less meat or no meat.
I'm so sorry that that's all the time we have. Please welcome back Editor-in-Chief and CEO of Time, Edward Felsenthal. So we go this way.